The salvage vessel. Morning Star drifted through the broken belt, its sensors scanning debris fields for anything valuable. Taman Park sat in the captain's chair, reviewing inventory reports with a tired expression. It had been 3 weeks since their last decent find, and fuel costs were eating into their savings. "Contact!" Hana Kim called from the pilot station. "Distress beacon, 200 kilometers starboard." Taman straightened. Distress beacons meant 2 things: potential rescue rewards or valuable salvage. Either way, it was worth investigating. "Take us in. Doyun, what can you tell me about the signal?" Doyun Choi worked his console, frowning at the readings. "It's old, maybe 3 weeks. The signature is Vralthan military." The bridge went silent. Everyone knew about the Vralthan. 6-limbed apex predators with crystalline scales and the ability to generate plasma from their own bodies. They were the galaxy's bogeymen, the species that made other species check their locks twice. Their empire was built on conquest and dominance. "We should report it to the Galactic Council and move on," Mireille Lee said from engineering. Her voice carried over the comm system, cautious and worried. "Vralthan don't leave distress beacons unless something went very wrong." Taman considered this. She was right. The smart play was to log the beacon and leave. But something nagged at him. Why would a Vralthan vessel be out here alone? Why would they activate a distress signal at all? The Vralthan preferred to die in battle rather than call for help. "We're checking it out," he decided. "Stay sharp, everyone." The derelict vessel came into view 30 minutes later. It was a small ship, barely larger than a shuttle. Hull breaches marked its surface, and its running lights were dark. Whatever had happened here, it had been violent. Hana brought them alongside carefully. Taman suited up and crossed over with Mirai, leaving Doyen and Hana to monitor from Morning Star. The airlock was damaged but functional. Inside, emergency lighting painted everything in dim red. "Life support is minimal," Mireille reported, checking her scanner. "Oxygen at 30%, temperature near freezing." They moved through the corridor. Bodies weren't unusual in salvage work, but Taman never got used to them. This time, though, they found none. The ship was empty except for scattered equipment and signs of a fight. Plasma burns scorched the walls. Something had battled here, hard. The cargo hold was at the ship's rear. Its door hung open, damaged by what looked like claws from the inside. Taman approached cautiously, his hand near his sidearm. Not that a human pistol would do much against a Vralthan, but it made him feel better. Inside the hold, he found them. 3 small forms huddled in the corner, barely moving. They were covered in crystalline scales that should have shimmered blue and silver but looked dull and gray. The largest raised its head as Taman entered, and 6 eyes opened to stare at him. It was a Vralthan cub, no bigger than a large dog. Its mouth opened, displaying rows of sharp teeth, and it made a hissing sound that would have been threatening if it wasn't so obviously weak. "Mireille," Taman said quietly. "We have survivors. 3 cubs." "Cubs?" Mireille's voice crackled with disbelief. "Taman, we need to leave. Now. If these are Vralthan young and we interfere, the Empire will consider it an act of war." She was right again. The Galactic Council had strict non-interference policies regarding Vralthan. The Empire was too dangerous to provoke over something like this. The smart play, the safe play, was to back away and let nature take its course. Taman looked at the cubs. The largest one was trying to protect the other 2, placing its body between them and the unknown threat. It was shaking with cold and exhaustion, but still trying to be brave. The other 2 were barely conscious. These weren't monsters. They were scared children. "Prep the medical bay," Taman said. "We're taking them." "Taman, I know the risks. Prep the medical bay." He moved slowly, hands visible. The largest cub hissed again, and small sparks of plasma danced across its scales. Even malnourished and freezing, it was trying to defend its siblings. Taman stopped and sat down on the floor, making himself smaller and less threatening. From his suit pocket, he pulled out a ration bar. He broke off a piece and held it out. The cub watched him with suspicious eyes, but didn't attack. Slowly, carefully, Taman placed the piece on the floor and slid it forward. The cub didn't move. Taman broke off another piece and ate it himself, showing it was safe. He slid another piece forward. This time the cub sniffed the air. Its scales rippled with uncertainty. Taman had an idea. He activated his personal hologram display, something he carried for entertainment during long trips. He pulled up an old file, something from his childhood back on Earth. Bright colors filled the air between them as the opening sequence of an ancient cartoon began to play. The cub's 6 eyes went wide. It stopped hissing. The aggressive posture faded as it stared at the moving images, transfixed by the colorful characters dancing across the hologram. Taman slowly moved the display closer, and the cub followed it with its gaze, completely mesmerized. Moving carefully, Taman wrapped the smallest cub in his thermal blanket. It barely reacted, too weak to resist. He handed it to Mirai, who had entered despite her concerns. They repeated the process with the second cub. The largest one watched but didn't attack, still captivated by the cartoon. When Taman reached for it, the cub finally reacted. But instead of plasma or claws, it pressed against his chest, seeking warmth. Taman felt its whole body shaking. He wrapped his arms around it, and the creature made a sound he'd never heard a Vralthan make before. It was almost like a purr. Back on Morning Star, Mirai worked frantically to stabilize the cubs. Vralthan biology wasn't in any human medical database, so she was improvising with what they knew about similar species. Warmth, fluids, and basic nutrients seemed to help. The cubs' scales began to regain some of their shimmer. Hana set course for Earth without being asked. It was the only place they could go. The Galactic Council would demand the cubs be returned to the Vralthan Empire. Any other species would refuse to harbor them out of fear. But Earth was independent, stubborn, and had a history of ignoring galactic politics when it suited them. As they jumped to faster-than-light travel, Taman sat in the medical bay, watching the 3 cubs sleep. The largest one had refused to rest until it saw its siblings breathing normally. Even now, it kept one eye partially open, watching for danger. Doyon appeared in the doorway. "You know this is going to cause problems." "I know. Big problems. The kind that end careers and possibly lives." "I know. Why then?" Taman looked at his navigator and shrugged. "They're just kids. Someone left them out here to die." "What kind of species does that?" "The Vralthan, apparently." "Yeah. Well, they're not Vralthan anymore. Not if I have anything to say about it." Doyon shook his head but smiled slightly. "You're either the bravest human I've met, or the dumbest." "Probably both," Taman admitted. He pulled up the cartoon on his display again, and the largest cub's eyes immediately focused on it. "Hey, little one, let's find you a name. How about Kale?" The cub made that purring sound again. Taman took it as approval. Earth was 3 days away. 3 days to figure out what he was going to do with 3 alien apex predators who would grow up to be able to tear apart starships with their bare claws. 3 days to prepare for the galaxy's response when they found out a human salvager had claimed Vralthan cubs as his own. But for now, he just watched them sleep and hoped he was making the right choice. The farmhouse sat in the Korean countryside, surrounded by rice fields and mountains. It had belonged to Taman's grandfather, empty for years until now. It seemed like a good place to raise 3 alien apex predators away from curious eyes and panicked neighbors. The first month was chaos. Kyle, Vesa, and Rin grew faster than any human child. Within weeks, they doubled in size. Their crystalline scales hardened, and their plasma abilities began to manifest. Taman quickly learned that baby Vralthan sneezed plasma when startled. His kitchen had the burn marks to prove it. Yuna Song, the local veterinarian, became a regular visitor. She was the only person Taemin trusted with the cub's medical needs. The first time she examined Kale, the cub tried to bite her. The second time, she brought fish-flavored treats. By the third visit, Kyle followed her around like a puppy. Their metabolism is insane, Yuna explained, reviewing her notes. They need 4 times the calories of a human child their size. And their scales? They're not just armor. They're also sensory organs and part of their digestive system somehow. I'm barely guessing here. You're doing great, Taemin assured her. I'm a cow doctor, Taemin, not a xenobiologist. Right now, you're the galaxy's only Vralthan pediatrician. That's pretty special. The cubs learned to understand Korean within 3 months. Actual speech took longer. Their vocal structure was different, designed for the harsh, clicking Vralthan language. But they adapted. Children were good at that. Ji-hoon Kang, a retired teacher from the nearby village, agreed to help with education. He showed up with books and lesson plans, took one look at 3 alien predators, and nearly left. But then Rin, the smallest, waddled over and offered him a crudely drawn picture of what might have been a flower or possibly an explosion. Ji-hoon stayed. Traditional Vralthan education focuses on combat and dominance, Ji-hoon said during one of their planning sessions. Everything I've read says they raise their young through competition and aggression. We're not raising them traditionally, Taemin replied. Clearly. But what are we teaching them instead? Taemin thought about this. He wasn't a parent, didn't have training in child development. All he had were memories of his own childhood and a collection of old Earth media. We teach them to be good, to care about others, to think before they fight. That's very idealistic. You have a better idea? Ji-hoon smiled. Actually, no. Let's see if we can make it work. The cartoons became central to everything, not by design, but because the cubs loved them. Kale would sit for hours watching old anime, his scales changing color with the emotions on screen. Vesa preferred shows with robots and vehicles, studying how they moved and worked. Rin liked anything with bright colors and happy endings. Taemin started using the shows to teach lessons. When Kale got aggressive with Vesa during a disagreement over food, Taemin paused their cartoon and asked, "What would the hero do right now?" Kale thought about it and then apologized. It became a pattern. In this episode, the main character shares even though he's hungry. Why does he do that? Because friends are more important than food, Vesa would answer. And when the villain tries to hurt people, what do the heroes do? They stop them but don't kill them, Kyle learned to say. Everyone deserves a second chance. These were not normal Vralthan concepts. The cubs were learning a different way to exist. Seung-ho Bae, Taemin's old military friend, handled the legal problems. The Galactic Council sent warnings. The Vralthan Empire sent threats. Earth's government sent inspectors. Seung-ho dealt with all of it, creating documentation that technically made the cubs Earth citizens. It wouldn't hold up under serious legal challenge, but it bought them time. You know this can't last forever, Seung-ho warned. Eventually someone is going to force the issue. Then we'll deal with it when it happens, Taemin said. Years passed. The cubs grew into adolescence by Vralathon standards. They were already larger than adult humans. Their scales shimmering with health, their plasma control precise and powerful. They could have been terrifying. Instead, they helped Ji-hoon's daughter Yoonji with her homework and insisted on setting the dinner table before meals. The incident with the bullies happened when the cubs were roughly equivalent to human teenagers. Yoonji had been walking home from school when 3 older boys cornered her, demanding money. She refused. They got aggressive. Kyle, Vesa, and Rin had been practicing their patrol route, something they'd copied from a superhero show. They heard Yoonji shout and responded instantly. The bullies saw 3 massive alien predators materialize from the shadows, crystalline scales gleaming, 6 eyes glowing, plasma crackling across their bodies. They screamed. Kale's instinct was to attack, his body tensed, ready to tear into threats against his friend. But he remembered the shows, remembered the lessons. He forced himself to stop and think. "Halt, evildoers," he announced in Korean, his voice deep and rumbling. "Your villainy ends here." The bullies stared in confusion. So did Yunji. Vesa moved next, placing herself between the boys and Yunji. But instead of attacking, she adjusted her plasma output, creating a bright but harmless light show. "Surrender peacefully and no one gets hurt." Rin struck a pose copied directly from a magical girl transformation sequence, complete with sparkles that he generated with carefully controlled plasma bursts. "The power of friendship will defeat you." The bullies were too confused to run. By the time adults arrived, drawn by the commotion, the cubs had the 3 boys sitting on the ground, listening to a lecture about respecting others and making better choices. Kyle was in the middle of explaining redemption arcs. Jihoon found the scene and had to sit down from laughing too hard. Later that night, Taemin sat with the cubs on their specially reinforced porch. They were eating their dinner, which Rin had insisted on arranging to look like characters from their favorite show. "You did good today," Taemin told them. "We didn't hurt anyone," Kale said proudly. "Just like the heroes wouldn't." "But we were strong enough to," Vesa added. "We chose not to. That's what makes us heroes, right?" "Right," Taemin confirmed. He felt a weight lift from his chest. They understood. Despite their nature, despite their instincts, they were choosing to be kind. Rin leaned against Taemin's side. At his size, it nearly knocked the human over. "Appa, can we watch the next episode?" Taemin smiled at the Korean word for father. They'd started calling him that months ago, and it never failed to warm his heart. "After dinner? And after you 3 help clean up." They groaned but complied. Even apex predators had to do chores. Yuna stopped by later with medical supplies. She'd been doing checkups monthly, tracking the cubs' development. "The village is talking," she said quietly, "about what happened today. Bad talk or good talk?" "Both. Some people are scared. Some think it's amazing. Yunji's parents are planning to bring them a thank you gift. The Galactic Council is going to hear about this eventually." "Probably," Yuna agreed. She watched through the window as the cubs argued about which show to watch, with Kale advocating for his magical girl anime and Vesa pushing for her mecha series. "Are you worried?" Taemin considered the question. 3 years ago, he'd found dying children in a derelict ship. Now they were healthy, happy, and debating cartoon preferences while doing dishes. They could generate enough plasma to melt through a starship hull, but they used that power to create sparkles for dramatic effect. "No," he decided. "Let the galaxy talk. We're doing fine." Inside, Rin won the argument by suggesting a compromise, a show that had both magical girls and robots. The other 2 agreed, and they settled down to watch together, a pile of scales and claws and contentment. Taemin joined them, sitting in his reinforced chair while Kale tried to explain the complex plot of their chosen show. Outside, stars filled the sky. Somewhere out there, the Vralthan Empire continued its conquests. The Galactic Council continued its debates. Here, in a farmhouse in rural Korea, 3 apex predators learned that strength was better used for protection than destruction, that everyone deserved second chances, and that the best way to solve problems was together. The galaxy would have opinions about this eventually. But for now, Taemin had a family. Strange, dangerous, and raised on cartoons. Perfect. The video went viral across the galaxy within 48 hours. Someone had recorded the incident with the bullies on their personal device. The footage showed 3 Vralthan cubs, species known for ruthless violence, stopping a confrontation with dramatic speeches and sparkles instead of their claws. Within days, it had been shared on every galactic network, translated into hundreds of languages, and dissected by millions of beings. The comments ranged from disbelief to horror to genuine fascination. This is clearly fake. Vralthan don't act like this. What have the humans done to them? That transformation pose was actually adorable. This is a violation of natural development laws. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Bowman Han, Earth's ambassador, stood before the assembled representatives and tried not to smile. The council chamber was massive, with seats arranged in circular tiers for the hundreds of member species. Today, every seat was full. Everyone wanted to discuss the Earth incident. Ambassador Han, the speaker began, a towering crystalline being whose species name was unpronounceable in human languages. Earth has harbored 3 Vralthan juveniles for approximately 4 Earth years. This was done without council approval and in violation of Protocol 7394, subsection 12B, which clearly states, "With respect," Bowman interrupted, "Earth is not bound by protocols we didn't agree to. We maintain independent status specifically to avoid this kind of bureaucratic interference." The Viroc's Dominion representative stood, his armored form bristling with weapons. "This isn't about bureaucracy. Those cubs are weapons. You're programming them for some human agenda." "We're teaching them to read," Bowman replied calmly, "and basic math, and apparently the importance of friendship. Terrifying stuff. You mock this council? I'm pointing out that a human found 3 dying children and saved them. That's not a crime. That's called basic decency." The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species agreed with the Vrocs. Others were more curious than hostile. The Whisper Communion, a pacifist collective, actually seemed intrigued by the cubs' non-violent approach to the bully situation. But the real drama came when War Prime Thalos arrived. The Vralthan representative was everything humans imagined when they thought of his species. 3 meters tall, scales that shifted between blue and silver, 6 arms that ended in claws capable of tearing through steel. His presence made the chamber go silent. "The cubs are defective," Thalos announced, his voice like grinding rocks. "They were abandoned according to our law. They showed weakness, emotional attachment to each other instead of proper competitive dominance. They were left to die, as is tradition." "You left children to die because they loved each other?" Bowman asked, letting his disgust show. "They were not compatible with our society. The humans' interference has only delayed the inevitable. Return them to us for proper disposal." "No." The single word hung in the air. Thalos turned his 6 eyes on Bowman, and several nearby representatives actually moved away from the Earth ambassador. "You refuse the Vralthan Empire?" Bowman stood his ground. "Those cubs are Earth citizens now. They have names: Kale, Vesa, and Rin. They have a home, a family, and a future. You abandoned them. We found them. By our laws, they're ours. Come and take them if you can." It was a challenge that could have started a war. The chamber held its breath. Thalos stared at the human for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he laughed. It was a harsh, scraping sound. "Perhaps I will visit this Earth and see what you've created. The galaxy is watching, Ambassador. Do not disappoint." He left without another word. 2 weeks later, Thalos arrived at Taemon's farmhouse. Taemon had received exactly 10 minutes warning. A diplomatic shuttle landing in his rice field, and War Prime Thalos emerging in full ceremonial armor, looking like he'd come to start a war. The cubs had different reactions. Kale immediately positioned himself between Thalos and the house, scales bristling, ready to protect his family. It was pure Vralthan instinct. Vesa's hands started glowing with plasma, but she held back, waiting to see what would happen. Rin went inside and came back with tea. Thalos approached. and Kale met him with a traditional Vralthan dominance display. He made himself as large as possible, generated impressive plasma arcs across his scales, and released a chemical signature that announced his claim to this territory. Thalos responded with his own display, far more powerful and intimidating. Then Rin walked between them, carrying a tray with cups and a teapot, completely unfazed by the two apex predators trying to out-threaten each other. "Hello?" Rin said brightly in Korean, then switched to stilted Vralthan. "Would you like tea? We have the good kind that Yuna brings." Thalos stopped. His scales shifted through several colors, expressing confusion in Vralthan body language. "What?" "Tea," Rin repeated. "It's hot, so be careful. Appa says we should always offer guests something to drink." "Are you staying for dinner? We're having bulgogi. Well, our version. We eat a lot of meat." Kyle and Vesa relaxed slightly, recognizing their siblings' strategy. This was the friendship approach from dozens of their shows. Confuse potential enemies with kindness, then build bridges. Taemin emerged from the house, trying to look calm despite facing a being that could kill him without effort. "War Prime Thalos, welcome. Please, sit. We can talk." Thalos looked between the human and the three cubs. This wasn't what he'd expected. He'd come to see the corruption, the weaponization, the proof that humans were turning Vralthan into something twisted. Instead, he found a family. They sat on the reinforced porch. Rin served tea. Thalos accepted it, mostly from confusion. Kale watched him carefully, protective, but not aggressive. Vesa brought out small cakes that Jihoon had taught her to make. "You've made them weak," Thalos finally said. "Have I?" Taemin gestured to Kale. "Kale, show him what you can do." Kale stood and moved to the practice area. He generated plasma and shaped it with precision that would have impressed any Vralthan warrior. He demonstrated speed, strength, and combat techniques. Then he stopped and returned to the porch. "I could hurt people," Kyle said in Vralthan, the language coming easier to him than Korean. "I choose not to. That's not weakness. That's control." "Control is not the Vralthan way." "Maybe it should be," Vesa interjected. She activated her personal tablet, showing Thalos schematics. "I've been studying weapons design. Our plasma abilities can be modulated for different effects. Stun instead of kill. Disable instead of destroy. We're not weaker. We're more versatile." Thalos examined the designs. They were good. Better than good, they showed tactical thinking that combined Vralthan natural abilities with human engineering principles. "And you?" Thalos turned to Rin, the smallest. "What can you do?" Rin smiled. "I make friends. I help people feel better when they're sad. I find peaceful solutions." He paused. "But I can also generate a plasma field that would vaporize this entire farm if I needed to. I just never need to." The War Prime was silent for a long moment. He drank his tea. It was actually quite good. "In our empire," he said slowly, "these three would have been killed for being different, for caring about each other, for refusing to fight their siblings for dominance." "Yes," Taemin agreed. "And you think your way is better?" "I think," Taemin said carefully, "that there's more than one way to be strong, and that choosing kindness when you could choose violence, that takes more strength than anything else." Dinner was surreal. War Prime Thalos sat at a human table, eating Korean food, while three cubs asked him about Vralthan history and culture, not military history. They wanted to know about art, music, stories, things the Empire didn't value. Thalos found himself answering, talking about things he hadn't thought about in years, old legends, traditional songs. The cubs listened with genuine interest. After dinner, Rin asked the question that changed everything. "War Prime, do you want to watch a show with us?" "A show?" Are cartoons. They're really good. This one has space battles and everything. Thalos almost said no, but curiosity won. He'd come to understand what the humans had done. Might as well see all of it. They watched 3 episodes. Thalos sat surrounded by cubs, watching a story about heroes who protected the weak, who gave enemies chances to surrender, who valued friendship and sacrifice. When it ended, he stood to leave. At the door, he turned back. "I came here to confirm you'd corrupted them," he told Taman. "I planned to report that Earth was creating weapons disguised as reformed Vralthan. And now? Now I don't know what to think. They're not traditional Vralthan, but they're also not weak." He looked at the 3 cubs. Perhaps our definition of strength was incomplete. After he left, Vesa spoke up. "He's going to tell others about us." "I know," Taman said. "The Empire will send more." "Probably." Kale put a hand on Taman's shoulder, gentle despite his strength. "We'll face it together. That's what families do." Across the galaxy, War Prime Thelos filed his report. It was not what the Empire expected. He described cubs who were powerful but controlled, dangerous but kind, and utterly devoted to each other and their human father. He ended with a line that would be quoted for years. Perhaps what we called defects were actually virtues we were too blind to see. The galaxy's attention fixed on Earth. The debate intensified. But in a farmhouse in Korea, 3 apex predators settled down for the night, content and loved. The storm was coming. But they would face it together. The Scraith swarm came without warning. They appeared at the edge of Galactic Council space, consuming 3 mining colonies before anyone understood what was happening. The Scraith were a hive-mind species, millions of individual bodies controlled by shared consciousness. They moved like a tide, overwhelming defenses through sheer numbers and terrifying adaptability. Traditional military responses failed. Destroy 1 wave, and 2 more would learn from the encounter and adapt. The Scraith consumed resources, technology, and living beings to fuel their expansion. The Galactic Council mobilized its defense fleets. Species that had been enemies for centuries worked together against this new threat. But the Scraith kept coming. The cubs watched the news broadcasts with growing concern. "We should help," Kale said during dinner one evening. He was now fully grown by Vralthan standards, towering over Taman, his scales a brilliant blue-silver that shifted with his emotions. "Absolutely not," Taman replied immediately. "People are dying," Vesa argued. She'd grown into her role as the engineer, constantly building and improving technology. "We have abilities that could make a difference. You're barely adults. This isn't some cartoon where the heroes always win." Rin, now as large as his siblings but with a gentler demeanor, spoke quietly. "You taught us to help people, to protect those who can't protect themselves. Isn't that what this is?" Taman had no good argument against his own lessons. He'd raised them to care, to intervene, to be heroes. Now they wanted to do exactly that, and he was terrified of losing them. The decision was taken out of his hands when an official communication arrived from Earth's military. They were requesting volunteers with unique abilities. The cubs qualified. "I could refuse permission," Taman said to Seong-ho, who delivered the message. "You could," his friend agreed. "But would they listen? They're adults now, Taman. Smart, capable adults who want to help save lives." In the end, Taman gave his blessing. But he also pulled every string he had to ensure they were assigned to a ship with a captain he trusted. Captain Narration commanded the frigate Dandelion Protocol. She was a veteran of Earth's various border conflicts, known for innovative tactics and keeping her crew alive. When she learned she was getting 3 Vralthan crew members, she had concerns. Those concerns lasted exactly 1 meeting. Kale, Vesa and Rin reported to her office in proper military uniform, adapted for their six-limbed physiology. They stood at attention and gave perfect salutes. "At ease," Nari said, studying them. "I've read your files, which are bizarre, by the way. Raised on Earth since you were cubs, educated through cartoons and homeschooling, no formal military training." "We've been training, Captain," Kale responded. "Just not traditionally. We understand tactics, teamwork, and conflict resolution. Conflict resolution against a hive mind swarm. Every problem has a solution if you look for it," Rin added cheerfully. Nari decided to reserve judgment. She assigned them to work with her human crew, Hyunwoo Jang on weapons and Minho Cha in engineering. Both men were professionals, but clearly nervous about working with Vralthan. The first week was tense. The Cubs' presence made everyone uncomfortable. Vralthan were enemies, or at least dangerous unpredictables. These three might have been raised by humans, but instinct ran deep. Then they reached the combat zone. The Scraith hit them without warning. Thousands of small attack craft, each controlled by the hive mind, swarmed the Dandelion Protocol. Standard procedure was to destroy as many as possible before they could overwhelm the shields. Kyle was at tactical. He watched the swarm patterns, processing data faster than the computer systems. "Captain, requesting permission to try something different." "Different how?" "Non-lethal approach first. These are individual beings forced into a collective consciousness. Maybe we can separate them." "That's insane." "Please, Captain, if it doesn't work, we fall back to standard protocols." Nari had seconds to decide. "Do it." Kale coordinated with Vesa in engineering and Rin at communications. What happened next would be analyzed by military strategists for years. Instead of destroying the Scraith craft, Vesa modified the weapon systems to generate targeted electromagnetic pulses. Kale identified the relay nodes in the swarm, the craft that maintained connection to the hive mind. Rin began broadcasting on multiple frequencies, not jamming but communicating. "We don't want to hurt you," Rin's message went out. "You're individuals. You have value beyond the swarm. Break free. We'll protect you." It shouldn't have worked. The Scrath had consumed dozens of worlds. They were relentless, mindless in their collective purpose, but they weren't mindless. They were minds forced together. The first craft to break free spiraled away from the swarm, its connection severed by Vesa's pulse and Kale's precision targeting. Then another, and another. The hive mind tried to compensate, but the Cubs had already moved to the next phase. They'd learned this pattern from 100 cartoon episodes. Find the heart of the problem, offer an alternative, protect those who choose change. Within an hour, they'd separated nearly 20% of the attacking force from the hive mind. Those craft fled the battle or simply stopped fighting, their individual pilots confused but free. The remaining swarm retreated, unable to adapt to an enemy that didn't fight the way it expected. The bridge of Dandelion Protocol was silent. "Report," Nari finally said. 22 enemy craft disabled without casualties," Hyunwoo reported, his voice stunned. 19 voluntarily surrendered after separation from the hive. 3 just left. "Engineering reports minimal damage," Minho added. "The modifications to our weapons were brilliant. We can replicate them across the fleet." Nari looked at the 3 Vralthan who'd just revolutionized space combat by refusing to fight traditionally. "Explain what you just did." Kyle spoke first. "The Scraith aren't evil, Captain. They're victims. Individual beings forced into a collective. Every show we watched taught us that the real victory isn't destroying your enemy. It's giving them a chance to be something else. We identified the weak points in their connection," Vesa continued. "Severed them carefully like surgery instead of amputation. Then Rin offered them hope." "Hope," Nari repeated. "Everyone wants to matter as an individual, Rin said. "The hive mind takes that away. We gave it back." Word of the battle spread quickly. Other ships tried to replicate the Cubs' tactics. Some succeeded, others failed. But the principle was sound. The Scraith could be freed, not just destroyed. The Cubs became famous. Media across the galaxy showed footage of 3 Vralthan, species known for violence, finding a peaceful solution to an impossible problem. But not everyone was happy. Traditional military commanders saw it as weakness. The Vrok's Dominion representative called it dangerous sentimentality. Even some humans worried about setting precedents. The Cubs didn't care about politics. They continued their work, refining their methods, saving lives. The major test came at Station Arclight. The station was a critical supply hub, home to 50,000 beings from 100 species. The Scraith sent their full force, learning from previous encounters. This wasn't a small squadron. This was millions of attack craft. The defense fleet was outmatched. Evacuation was impossible. The order came to fall back and let the station be sacrificed. Captain Nari refused. "Dandelion Protocol will hold the line." Her crew looked at her like she was insane. 1 frigate against millions. It was suicide. Kyle stood from his station. "Captain, we have a plan, but it's going to sound crazy." "Everything about you 3 sounds crazy. Talk." They called it the Nakama Protocol, named after a word from Kale's favorite shows meaning friends or crew. The plan was simple in concept, impossible in execution. Find the central nodes of the Scraith force, sever their connection to the hive simultaneously, broadcast an offer of individuality and purpose, protect those who broke free, all while surviving the assault. "We'll need every ship," Vesa said, "and modifications to all weapon systems. I can transmit the specifications. We'll need a broadcast powerful enough to reach millions of individual Scraith," Rin added, "and a message compelling enough to make them choose freedom. And we'll need someone to face the primary hive node directly," Kale finished. "That's me. I'll board their command ship and sever the connection from the inside." "That's suicide," Yunwu said. "No," Kale replied. "That's what heroes do." Nari made the call. They had 20 minutes before the swarm arrived. Ships across the fleet implemented Vesa's modifications. Rin prepared his broadcast, drawing on years of learning about motivation, hope, and redemption. And Kale prepared to do something no Vralthan had done in living memory, sacrifice himself for others. Taemin's voice came through on personal comms connecting from Earth. "Kyle, don't do this." "I have to, Appa. You taught me to protect people. I taught you to survive. You taught me to live. This is living." The swarm arrived like a nightmare, millions of craft blotting out the stars. Station Arclight's shields began to fail immediately. Then the Dandelion Protocol and the defense fleet enacted the Nakama Protocol. It was beautiful and terrible. Ships coordinated with precision, targeting hive nodes with modified weapons. The battlefield lit up with electromagnetic pulses and plasma bursts that disabled without destroying. Rin's broadcast went out, his voice carrying across millions of frequencies. "You are individuals. You have names, histories, purposes beyond consumption. Break free. We will protect you. You matter." And Kale, in a small boarding craft, flew directly into the heart of the swarm toward the primary command ship. What happened in the next hour would be remembered forever. Kale's boarding craft punched through the swarm with shields at maximum. Thousands of Scraith attack ships tried to stop him, but Vesa had modified his vessel with technology that shouldn't have been possible. Human creativity combined with Vralthan plasma generation created weapons that adapted in real time. The command ship was massive, a biological construct that pulsed with the collective consciousness of the entire swarm. Kale crashed through its outer membrane and emerged into a nightmarish interior of living walls and neural pathways. He was immediately surrounded by Scraith warriors. In their true form, They were beautiful, crystalline beings with multiple limbs and bioluminescent patterns. But under hive control, they moved like puppets. Their individual lights dimmed. Kyle didn't attack. Instead, he stood tall and spoke, broadcasting his words through every frequency. I am Kyle. I was left to die because I cared about my siblings. I was rescued by someone who taught me that strength isn't about domination, it's about choice. You can choose, right now. Be individuals again. The warriors hesitated. The hive mind pushed them forward, but something in Kyle's words resonated. These beings had been individuals once. A massive Scraith war form emerged, 3 times Kyle's size. It was the primary enforcer, the hive's avatar. It attacked without words. Kyle fought back, but not to kill. Every move was defensive, precise. He disabled limbs without destroying them, avoided vital areas. And he kept talking. You had a name once, a life, dreams. The hive took that, but it doesn't have to keep it. Fight with me, not against me. Remember who you were. The war form struck again and again. Kyle took damage, his scales cracking, but he didn't stop talking, didn't stop offering hope. Outside, the Nakama protocol was working. Thousands of Scraith craft were breaking free from the hive, their individual pilots choosing freedom. Rin's broadcast echoed across space. Gentle, but persistent. Vessa's weapons carved surgical paths through the swarm, severing connections without casualties. Station Arclight held. Barely. Inside the command ship, something changed. The warform's attacks slowed. Its bioluminescent patterns began to shift, becoming less synchronized with the hive. Behind its eyes, intelligence returned. I was Keleth, it spoke, the words crude and unused. I had siblings. You still do, Kyle said, dropping his combat stance. Every Scraith here is your sibling, and you can free them. Keleth stared at this strange being, this predator who fought with mercy. The hive mind screamed in Keleth's consciousness, demanding obedience, but the cracks were already forming. How? Together, Kale said, extending one clawed hand. We sever the central node. Give everyone their choice back. It was insane. It was impossible. It was exactly the kind of thing that worked in every show Kale had ever watched. Kaleth took his hand. They moved through the living ship, 2 warriors fighting not against enemies, but against a system. They found the central node, a massive organic computer that maintained the hive's control. This will hurt, Kaleth warned. All of us, the separation. Freedom usually does, Kale replied. But it's worth it. They struck together. Vralthan plasma and Scraith bioenergy combined, tearing through the node's defenses. The hive mind screamed, the ship convulsed. Every Scraith in the swarm felt the connection shatter. For a moment, millions of beings experienced simultaneous trauma and liberation, then chaos, then silence, then choice. The Battle of Station Arclight ended not with destruction but with confusion. Millions of Scraith craft simply stopped fighting. Some fled, some stayed, uncertain. Many reached out for help, newly freed pilots asking what to do now. Kale emerged from the command ship with Keleth, both injured but alive. The galaxy watched. Captain Nari found her voice first. Status report. Station Arclight is secure, Hyunwoo reported. Casualties minimal. The swarm is scattered, no longer coordinated. We have approximately 2 million Scraith who've requested asylum, Minho added, sounding overwhelmed. They don't want to be part of the collective anymore. Rin's broadcast shifted from combat to comfort. You're safe now. You're individuals. We'll help you figure out what that means. The aftermath took weeks to sort through. The Galactic Council convened emergency sessions. What did you do with 2 million newly independent Scraith? Where did they go? How did you help beings who'd never had individuality adjust to freedom? Earth offered to help. So did a few other species, the ones who'd been watching the cubs' development with interest rather than fear. But other responses came too. Not all of them good. The Vrock's Dominion was furious. This is unacceptable warfare. You've destabilized an entire enemy species, created a refugee crisis. And for what? Sentiment? We saved lives, Vesa countered during one council session. She'd become comfortable with public speaking. Both Scraith and those they would have killed. That's not sentiment. That's strategy. It's weakness, the Vrock's representative spat. You should have destroyed them. And created martyrs? Kyle asked. Ensured the next generation of Scrath would be even more aggressive? No. We offered them something better than endless war. The debate raged. But something else was happening, something the traditional powers didn't notice until too late. Earth's methods were spreading. Young beings across the galaxy had watched 3 Viralthan raised on cartoons revolutionize warfare through compassion. They'd seen the impossible work, and they wanted to replicate it. Alien adolescents started forming groups based on Earth's concept of nakama. They demanded their governments consider redemption before destruction. They questioned why species that had been enemies for centuries couldn't try to understand each other. Earth cartoons, once considered primitive entertainment, became the most pirated media in galactic history. Everyone wanted to understand what the cubs had learned. Military academies started teaching the Earth method as an alternative doctrine, not replacement for traditional tactics, but an option. 3 months after the Battle of Station Arclight, the first unintended consequence manifested. A minor warlord empire on the galactic rim collapsed overnight, not through invasion or revolution, but because their soldiers simply left after watching too many anime shows about friendship and redemption. They decided they'd rather form a cooperative than serve a tyrant. Then it happened again. And again. The Galactic Council realized they had a crisis, just not the one they'd expected. Ambassador Bowman Han was summoned to explain why human media was weaponizing friendship across the galaxy. We didn't plan this, Bowman said, trying not to laugh. One human found 3 kids and showed them cartoons. Everything else just happened. Your media is destroying traditional power structures. Good ones or bad ones? Bowman asked. Because from what I see, the systems falling apart are usually the oppressive ones. Back on Earth, Taman watched his cubs become galactic celebrities from the safety of his farmhouse. They visited when they could, bringing stories of freed Scraith learning about individual identity, of former enemies becoming friends, of species beginning to communicate instead of fight. But the strangest visit came from War Prime Thelos. He arrived without warning, without ceremony. Just an old warrior walking up to the farmhouse and knocking on the door. Taman, Thelos greeted. War Prime. Tea? They sat on the porch again like they had years ago. But this time, Thelos looked tired. The Vralthan Empire is changing, he said quietly. Young ones are questioning our ways. They've seen what Kael, Vesa, and Rin achieved. They want to know why we don't have redemption arcs or value nakama. Is that bad? I don't know. Our culture has been the same for thousands of years, built on strength through dominance. Now cubs refuse to fight their siblings for status. They want to cooperate instead. He paused. What have you done to us? I didn't do anything to you, Taman replied. I just raised 3 kids. Your empire's choice to value only aggression. That was already a problem. My kids just showed there were alternatives. Thelos was silent for a long moment. Other Vralthan are coming to Earth. Hundreds of them. The ones who never fit our warrior culture. They want what you gave the cubs. Tell them to bring sleeping bags. The farmhouse isn't that big. Despite everything, Thelos smiled. You joke, but you've started something that can't be stopped. The galaxy is changing because 3 defective cubs learned to care about others. They were never defective, Taman said firmly. Your species just couldn't see their value. After Thalos left, Taman sat alone watching the sunset. Across his fields, temporary shelters were being erected. Young Vralthan were arriving, seeking the Earth education. Yuna was organizing medical care. Jihoon was preparing lesson plans. Sungho was handling the legal chaos. His quiet life was over. What had started as saving 3 dying children had somehow become a movement. The galaxy was changing. Traditional warfare was being questioned. Redemption was becoming a legitimate strategy. And somehow, accidentally, Earth had become the center of this transformation. All because one human had decided that scared children deserved to be saved, regardless of what species they were. Taman smiled. He'd made the right choice that day on the derelict ship. He'd kept making the right choices, and now the galaxy would have to deal with the consequences. A generation raised to believe that everyone deserved second chances, that strength was best used to protect, and that friendship was more powerful than fear. The old powers regretted letting this happen, but it was too late to stop it. The cubs had shown the galaxy a better way. Now others were following.